Speculation has been rife that former President Jacob Zuma may resign from the ANC and could have a new political home tomorrow. I'm now joined by political analyst Thobani Zikalala ahead of the expected announcement. Thobani, appreciate your time on this Friday. How likely is it that Jacob Zuma will actually leave the ANC and form a new political party or align himself to an existing political party?
Good evening to your viewers. I think as much as it is something that many of us have thought it would never happen, but the South African political landscape has taught us that nothing is impossible. I think for me and maybe many others, Jacob Zuma's political legacy, maybe even political future and political standing in society is always tied hand in glove with the ANC. It is very difficult, it's going to be very difficult to imagine Jacob Zuma outside of the ANC. I mean, if you look at the troubles he's facing now and he's faced all in the past, I think he is in an environment where he doesn't have much pressure for him to leave the ANC. I think there were times where the pressure, the political pressure and the pressure in society was much more bigger than it is today. So for me, if I was a fly in the wall and I could give a little bit of advice to former President Jacob Zuma, I would say there is no need for any big political move that you can make today. I think, of course, also he may be pushed to make such a move because, again, the legal situation that he faces and many of the political pressures that he faces today, even though they are not much bigger than they were maybe in 2016, 2017, and even years before that, 2005 to 2007. But all these battles that he has fought, many of them are politically tied to the ANC, are politically tied to state administration. Jacob Zuma may find himself in a position where he needs to have influence over state administration in order to secure his legal and political future. And maybe this is why this speculation is rising over him maybe eventually leaving in the ANC. But if it was me, I would have advised that it's unnecessary. I think, but this is also a trait of many South African politicians with regards to a lot of them, their futures being tied to state administration and political influence in a way that it will make them to make such big political decisions because they always need to stay close to state administration, Europe.
Now, Jacob Zuma has been with the ANC for all of 60 years. And during that time, he obviously made many comrades and many friends. But does Jacob Zuma still have friends in the ANC? And that question one would ask because Jacob Zuma was imprisoned at the hands of the ANC government, right? And that, for me, potentially could make him very bitter, would give him justification if it were to leave the ANC.
The problem would be, I don't think Jacob Zuma will not have comrades and friends inside the ANC. The big question should be, does Jacob Zuma still enjoy friendship and comradeship from those who are in the higher echelons of the political landscape in South Africa and the ANC? Do those who run South African society and the state today enjoy the comradeship and the friendship of Zuma? I do not think that is the case, because if it was, some of the pressures that he's facing and some of the troubles that he's facing, he would have not faced. I don't think Jacob Zuma would have been in prison if he still enjoyed true comradeship from those who lead and run the ANC. I think it is very clear that Jacob Zuma is almost at loggerheads with those who run the ANC and are in leadership of the ANC. But of course, because of his political influence and his political standing in society and inside the ANC, the current leadership and those who are in the higher echelons of the ANC have always treated him in a way that they do not maybe want to seem to be clearly at loggerheads with him. But the political actions and political expressions that have been happening since Jacob Zuma left power clearly show that Jacob Zuma does not maybe still enjoy true comradeship from those who run the ANC, which is why maybe it will be reason enough for Jacob Zuma to say, I've endured this type of uncomrade-like behavior for so long. Maybe it's time for me to find a new political home where I could enjoy a treatment that is comrade-like. Is that possibility outside of the ANC? Is it joining a new political party, or as like many have said, is it starting a new political party? We wait to see. But as I said, for me, the biggest problem that Jacob Zuma faces that post the 2017 National Conference of the ANC, his forces, his comrades, and his friends inside the ANC, when they started losing power, they did not politically organize themselves for the eventuality of regaining some stronghold over the ANC and eventually taking over power in 2022. They arrived in 2022, those who were maybe be seen as comrades of Zuma or Zuma's faction, they arrived disorientated, disorganized, and maybe even divided, which made it possible for those who opposed Jacob Zuma to continue to reign supreme and gain hegemony of the ANC, which is why maybe Jacob Zuma today may find himself almost isolated in the higher echelons of the ANC.
Now, if Jacob Zuma was to form a new political party, what impact could this have on the political landscape in South Africa, especially in the lead up to 2024 general elections?
The first thing is, how quickly can Jacob Zuma, if he starts a new political party, how quickly can he organize real organization of a political party? Because organizing a political party, a mass party, is not an easy exercise. But that political impact, you will see that if that political party emerges, it will almost take on all the traditions that people like Jacob Zuma and many others are saying are true ANC-like. So its big political impact will be chowing at the ANC vote. But at the chowing of the ANC vote, will it be big enough? I think we have seen in the past where those who have tried to go against the ANC, like your COPE in the past and the EFF, they've been struggling to go over 50% in terms of the vote. But we know that anyone who leaves the ANC and is able to properly organize themselves can have a dent in the leadership or in the votes of the ANC. Can Jacob Zuma bring the disgruntled voters of the ANC who may not be voting for the ANC currently to come and vote for him as this representative of this true ANC he speaks about? We wait and see. But already we know that predictions of those who do research already tell us that the ANC may fall below 50% next year. Does that falling below 50% give parties like a possible Jacob Zuma party the sizable amount of votes to be able to dictate and to be sitting at the table which would decide the coalition government going into 2024? Because those are some of the things that those who are doing research are doing. I think for me, those are the big questions we must ask ourselves, and because that's where our answers may lie, that the biggest impact that Jacob Zuma properly organized, and that is for me the most critical thing. It is not enough to use the Jacob Zuma name. It is not enough to use the Jacob Zuma image and legacy. The most important thing will be, will that party be resourced enough? Will that party be organized well enough? But will that party have a proper machinery to be able to withstand? Because we know that there is a very big cloud and very big pressure that Jacob Zuma has faced since maybe 2005. And that needs a sort of a political cleansing for that party to be able to survive. So will those who want to start a new political party, if that's their view, be able to organize properly in quick enough before the elections in 2024? I think there should be no risk taken. And I understand Jacob Zuma to be a very astute politician who maybe will have considered all these things that we are speaking about. Because again, if he doesn't do well, if he leaves the ANC and doesn't do well in the 2024 elections, he disappears into oblivion, and also it takes a dent in his own legacy. And this is what Jacob Zuma, I think, should be considering enough. Considering what is more important, the preserving of his glorious liberation legacy, or the continuous political participation, which will make him seem as someone who is holding on to power for dear life. And I think those are the big considerations that Jacob Zuma should have made. And if those are not made, I think Jacob Zuma will have made a big mistake.
So you speak of preservation, but let's talk about the battles that are going on. Jacob Zuma has taken on President Cyril Ramaphosa in the courts of law. So obviously the gloves are off. That's on the one aspect. We did talk about former President Jacob Zuma being imprisoned. So again, that's another issue. So as far as he's concerned, he might think, you know what, there's very little in the way of preservation, because these individuals that are in the upper echelons of the ANC, as you've suggested, are no longer friends of Jacob Zuma. But let's shift focus a little bit and talk about KZN and the amount of influence that former President Jacob Zuma has in the KZN. So I'm not talking about disgruntled voters. I'm talking about the voting majority in the KZN that have a love for Jacob Zuma and will support Jacob Zuma. Then also there's the aspect to those individuals that are disgruntled with the ANC and its leadership. Does that not give him? Is that not food for thought?
It's of course food for thought, and it's something I think Jacob Zuma will have considered. And maybe if he moves out of the ANC, it is something that will have maybe spurred him on. But my thing, Hugo, is on this position. Do the people who love Jacob Zuma, who he has political influence over, who so much love him in KwaZulu-Natal? My big question that I've always asked myself: do those people love Jacob Zuma because he is Jacob Zuma, or do they love Jacob Zuma as a member of the ANC? So is the love for Jacob Zuma divorced from the love from the ANC? Will those who love Jacob Zuma today vote for him if he was in a different party? Because for me, as much as I know that Jacob Zuma enjoys much support and much influence in the province, but there are people who may love Jacob Zuma as a figure and as an elder and as a leader in the province, but merely for that, because some of them may be in different political spaces. Those who are in the ANC, they may love him more because he belongs to their party. What happens when he leaves that party? Will those people live with him? Because that's the big question that I think is important. I do not think that it will happen. There are many people who have loved Jacob Zuma, and this is not the first time a hinting of a new political possibility for Jacob Zuma has been. I think it has happened since his troubles, maybe more instantly with the 2016-2017 state capture case, right? That there always been this muting of a new political possibility around Jacob Zuma and those who support him. And there's always been this idea that some of the staunch supporters and those who have always been in the forefront of supporting Zuma may not really consider leaving the ANC with him, and they may not consider voting otherwise with him. And this is why maybe Jacob Zuma, even in the past, even when times were difficult, has not really come out as someone who may leave the ANC. I mean, he has always come out as someone who loves the ANC and will love it to death. So it will, for me, if he makes this move, it will have taken real political consideration, which maybe did not start yesterday. It's a long process because for me, I cannot imagine Jacob Zuma outside of the ANC. I think Jacob Zuma, if you read his history and you understand his history, he's maybe one of the few people who you could say, this is an ANC man. All he knows politically is ANC. All he has ever been is ANC. All his other life has been shaped by the ANC and its liberation struggle in South Africa. So imagine Jacob Zuma outside of the ANC, for me, it is a difficult issue.
Well, I guess we'll find out tomorrow whether or not we should imagine that. Thobani Zikalala, political analyst, giving us his thoughts on the impending announcement by former President Jacob Zuma tomorrow on his political future, and we will begin giving you that report live tomorrow.